Working on today is a 2012 Ford Fusion SEL. And I'm about to pull this valve cover off, place the valve cover gaskets. This is the front one, really easy one. And the place where it's leaking at is just right down here in the front. I'm not going to worry about showing it on the camera, but there's a place here on the front where I guess there's a transition, and we'll look at that in a little bit. I get it off, but what I've done is I've taken all the wires off. I've taken the 13mm bolt out of this dipstick and tried to give myself some space, and then disconnected the wires from these two spots here. Of course, that one busted right off, but I got it all loose so that I could get some slack. Okay, once you get a little slack in this wire harness, you can push it down. You can push it down below the edge here and get it out of the way, so that when you pull this thing out, you don't have anything bothering you. I will make a note about these little guys here. Okay, each one of these has like a small lip on it that kind of holds it in there. I don't think that the function of that is anything but holding it in there for a factory install. Keep these bolts from falling out. Now I took all of them out except the center two. I didn't want any dirt or anything to fall down in there. But these here, if you want it to be easier for these to get out, you can shoot some silicone. Just silicone spray in there and wiggle these around, but you have to wiggle them, rock them back and forth and pull out to get this little guy to pop out. What I'm looking for by popping these out is to get this bolt out of the way so that when I'm moving it around, it doesn't ding anything. Moving that valve cover around with this bolt hanging out doesn't cause any problems. Okay, just trying to make clearance. The front valve cover doesn't matter as much as the rear. But let's have a look-see and see what happens here. Hang on. Okay, so I've got that thing popped off, and what I'm looking at here is these transitions where there's a small crack in the head where they've put silicone on it from the factory. Okay, now that one looks pretty good. There's one there. That's where the water pump bolts on. Or not the water pump, sorry. The pulley housing that runs the water pump. Okay, that one looks pretty good. Well, this one here, it looks fine, but there's oil dripping down the side of the head on the front right there under it. So it looks okay, but it's leaking. So we're going to clean that up and get it sorted out. There's the other side. Now this side doesn't have oil setting on it, and going up against it, I suppose, the same way as this other one. Let's look here and see what this valve cover looks like. And it's got a small spot there where the silicone went into that crack. But it looks like it made a good seal. I got a felpro gasket set for this. And it looks like it's sealed up pretty good, but this is the top side. The bottom one, the silicone, it stayed on it. I don't think it stuck very well. Okay, so this particular car, it's got the 3.0 liter V6 in it. And this is the valve cover gasket part number. And that's the intake manifold part number for that. You can see those, but these are kind of in a box. But if you're wondering what your model is and all that business, it'll have it up here. 3.0 group right there. And if that doesn't work and you need to know more, you could use the last 8 digits of your VIN number, call the dealer and figure it out from that. But yeah, that's kind of what it looks like. You know, we've got one lobe that's got a little streak on it right here. It's not in a good spot. Not much we can do about it besides just take note of what's going on and anticipate, you know, if something starts making noise, we can have a better look at it. You see, with that felpro kit, we'll replace all these O-rings, but these are in good shape. There was no leaks or anything. You know, just be careful about how much dirt and crap you get down in there, because that's not fun. I'm going to wash this off, clean it up, put it back on. Alright, so about these grommets. That kit comes with new grommets. It comes with a whole bag of them, and I know I didn't say that earlier, but this is what This is what they look like, the felpro ones, okay? It's got a little lip on there. The factory one looks like this. And when you pop that factory one out, it breaks. And if you don't want to break them and you're going to reuse it, or you're taking this off for some other reason, you can shoot silicone in there. Once you get the silicone in there, it pops right out very easy, okay? Now, on these two in the center, I left these two in and I put these two back in first. Clean them up. Perfect. Everything has to be clean, because on these two here, this is a gasket area. If you look on the intake manifold, or the head here, you'll see that these two bolts here are exposing the oil. These two have to seal and work perfect. All the other ones are on the outside of the gasket, you can see. So just pay special care to these. Clean the hole up very nice. Put some silicone spray or something in there so that they pop through and all four tabs are out. Everybody's happy. So put new gaskets here. Felpro says install dry. So we're going to do what Felpro says. As far as that's concerned, you know, we got a couple of new gaskets here. I'm going to stick those in the slots. This stuff is really nice. And we'll get it on to the next step. Alright, so I got the gasket all on there. I've got my silicone spots. I just did it with my finger, tooled it a little bit. Made sure everything was stuck nice, but I will go over a detail about this gasket to make sure that people have what's going on in the right way. There's two different gaskets, and when you put these O-ring style gaskets on, they have these little divots for the silicone to fit in. What that is that this cover on the end has a rubber gasket that goes all the way around it, and it sticks up just a little bit on the end. This little pocket here is designed to fit over that existing gasket that's there. I don't know how well that works or anything like that, but I mean, we have to put silicone around it anyway. So, but just make sure you start the gasket with these little divots facing out. Okay, you put these in first. You push those in first like this, and you get each one centered in that small hole that's designed into the intake. You'll see that there's a small place for it to fit into. Okay, and there's 4 of them. You put those in first, and then you work that gasket in all the way around. Work it in real slow and make sure it's pushed down, and you follow along the edge and you make sure it's all the same all the way around. Go around and just kind of push it in, slide your finger along it, make sure it's in. These are really nice gaskets. They'll do the job. But if you don't put it in correctly, you're going to have problems. We don't want problems. So I've got these 3 spark plug O-ring type gaskets stuck on there. The kit comes with a new gasket for that sensor there, and it comes with a new, a new seal for this and for the other thing. Those things are not leaking. I'm not going to worry about that. If you want to mess with them, fine. I just will warn you that if you decide to mess with this seal on here and drive it out and drive it in and all that, don't forget, we are working with a plastic valve cover and it's very expensive. So if it's not leaking and have a problem, I suggest leaving the thing alone, because it's going to break that. You're going to break that plastic. The older it is, the more brittle it gets, and you got problems if you mess with it. Okay, now I've got it all set on there, and what I did is I started each one of these screws just a little bit, and I got these pliers, and of course I put silicone on it, and I pushed it down and clicked it in, and you can see how it's sitting there. Okay, each one is lined up in the center properly, and each one is clicked in past that little end right here. Okay, and I put silicone on each one just a little bit so that when I pushed it in, it will click past and set properly. If you don't do that right, this end is going to get caught funny, and it's not going to work the way it's supposed to work. So please take some care on what you're doing on that. Also, these bolts, they all have a limit where you tighten it down and it hits a certain spot, and then you just torque it a little bit, probably inch-pounds. I wouldn't think that these would go past maybe 150 or 180 inch-pounds. I'm going to do it by feel, but just be very careful that there's no wires or anything stuck under the edge anywhere. If you bolt this thing on crooked, you will break it. Then you will have to start over. So just make sure everything is clear, all of them are pushed down properly. Start in the center and work your way out in a cross pattern. And don't go crazy with it, okay? Do use hand tools and be careful with this stuff. Let's get to the next step. All right, so get this intake off. What you need to do is, you disconnect this, all your connectors and stuff, and just shove all that stuff down there and get it out of the way. This thing here has a tab that you push out. I guess it'd be easier to show with this, but pushes out like that. And then you get up under it with something like this and you push it up slowly. Okay, it's got an O-ring in there. You're going to want to lube it before you put it back together. But that's how that sucker comes out. And it's tricky, and if you bust it, you're not going to be happy. I'm not going to worry about this fuel line, but I am going to pop all this stuff loose here. I put a little, and I got this little hose tool here and stuck it in there and lifted that up. And I sprayed some silicone in there and worked it around. Slides right off, like beautiful. It's perfect. But there's another one back here. You disconnect this. There's a small little pin that pushes in that if you're not real careful, it'll break off. So you have to be real careful with that. Break it, just use zip tie. Just push that down out of the way. You just have a few bolts to take out on this. This is a real light load, inch-pound torque type situation here, and it's plastic. So just be careful and don't force anything. Okay, so let's go over a few details here. Now what you'll have to do is this thing here needs to come loose, okay? It's got a big old huge O-ring in there. So you take these two bolts out. Well, that doesn't finish the job. Down here, there's a bolt down there. I don't know if I can get it up here with you or not. I don't think so. Anyway, I was able to reach under the front of this with my hand and take that little guy out. All right, so there's two of them on a bracket. There's another one right below this bolt here on a bracket, right below it, above that silver hose. I can show it, but it may be something that you're going to have a lot of trouble with. So just take your time to get that out. There's no other way around it. So I thought, all right, well, if I take the battery out, that'll help for this bolt on this side. But the bolt that's over there, you're going to have to struggle with that. So just a little bit at a time, and you'll spend your most time on those two bolts right there. All right, well, sorry about that, but that little guy has to come off. The end of it has such an angle on it, it's not going to come out. I thought I could get it. I knew it had a little bit of angle on it by looking at the pictures in the book, but now, and there may be a Ford tech out there somewhere that can tell me otherwise, but it had to be taken off. So anyway, this is where those two bolts are that you're going to spend a lot of time on, man. Them suckers are tough to get to, and you can't see them. It's blind work, man. So there's an 8mm bolt way down there, and I guess what you could do if you didn't want to mess with those two is take that 8mm bolt down there out, or at least take it loose to help. But taking that out means you don't have to remove the bolts out of this bracket. You just have to pop this little wire loose here, and the whole bracket will come out with it. It will come out and go straight up, and it'll be no problem. I did have to take the fuel line loose. I did that because I thought I could maneuver this thing around enough to get it out. You just need one of these little things. I've got a nylon kit that does that with different sizes. So I think that one's 1/2 inch, which is probably metric. But anyway, that's what it looks like to get that thing off. Man, you just gotta take all the stuff off. It's a little bit at a time. So now, it's just a standard let's take the valve cover off job. All right, and I'm not going to show that on here, and I'm not going to show this going back together because it's not really worth that trouble. I did want to show some details about these things here. When you take the fuel line loose, be careful. If it has pressure, it's going to spray in the eye. And in this thing here, sometimes these little clips they'll fall out. So I push them back in and click them in so that they don't fall out and get lost. But you know, it's pretty cut and dry, simple job from here. You know, as far as getting that valve cover off, and if you got it this far where the intake comes off, then you can get that sucker back on. Just be careful if there's any debris or anything on top of this to lift this off straight off with 2 hands. I'm not going to touch it now. It's coming off, I promise. It's going to have a lot of dirt and crap in it, and you don't want to pour that into the intake manifold. So when you get this off and you get those ports cleaned up, you're going to either want to tape them shut or put a towel or rags in them or something to keep something from falling to your engine and destroy it. So that's what everything looks like. I hope that this helps someone along the line with just a few knick-knack details about the job. Y'all be careful and have a good day.